Hello everyone, welcome, I'm Robert, and have you ever wanted to experience a tabletop RPG like D&D, but simply don't have the time, or maybe you can't find a local playgroup, or you just don't have a close enough LGS, or maybe you just hate people, and you don't want to be around them?
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Well, say no more, my friend. Today, I'll list the top 20 soloable RPG, adventuring, and dungeon crawling board games that can be enjoyed by yourself from the comfort of your home. No DM required. Now, originally, my intention was to make a separate video list for each of these genres, but I realized that there would have been a lot of overlap because a lot of these titles are great at checking several boxes. So, I've decided instead to discuss them all in one video, and I'll explain the strengths of each game and which boxes they check. So if you're looking for that game that will scratch that RPG itch controlling a full party of characters with diverse classes, or maybe you prefer embarking on a lone wolf overland adventure with strong emerging narrative, or maybe instead you'd rather just smash calls and gain loot while dungeon crawling, there's definitely something in this list for you. This time, I've listed the games alphabetically, but if I consider a game my number one in a particular genre, I'll point it out. And without further ado, let's get started. Alright, let's start with a bang. This is Arkham Horror 2nd Edition, and this is a beloved classic and just a groundbreaking game for its time, and despite its age, I think this game has held up really well. Now, I played it for the first time this year, and I held off on it for a while just because of the fact that you have to control four characters in this game for the best experience, although you could control less if you wanted, but it is a bit of a table hog for sure, and controlling four characters might not be for everybody, at least if you don't have, if you're relatively new to the hobby. I did make a video specifically reviewing this game if you want to hear my extended thoughts, so I'll link that. But the short of it is that this game is amazing at creating an emerging narrative, and it is a bit lengthy, but by the time you're done after your 3 to 4 hour session controlling your four characters and going around the streets of Arkham and visiting dimensions and killing monsters, you're gonna feel like you just completed a campaign, like a whole RPG campaign, and you're gonna find items, and there's dice rolling for completing for resolving combat and completing tests or resolving tests. And it's not a campaign or scenario based game. You simply shuffle a bunch of decks, pick a bunch of characters, and old one at random, and you just have at it, and you have to control the basically kind of put out fires around Arkham and prevent the old ones from taking over. Now, keep in mind that this is out of print. There are other options that are a bit more simplified, like Eldritch Horror and also Arkham Horror 3rd Edition. I've not tried those myself, and you'll hear very interesting opinions on those. I don't feel the need for trying those yet myself. Either way, if you find a box for this, this game is worth it. The rules initially might feel a bit archaic, but it's basically as long as you follow the phases, you're gonna be good to go. There is definitely a bit of a learning curve to this, and also the fact that you have to control multiple characters. It is also a bit of a table hog, but I would be doing you a disservice if I did not mention this title. It's just so great at creating those emerging narratives with the overland map and the exploration. No two games will ever feel the same, even with just the base game. I feel like I've barely scratched the surface just with a couple games that I played of this, but they will feel epic. And just from a couple games that I played, I got a ton out of it, and I liked it so much. It's just one of those games that I could just play whenever, pretty much. I love this, and I love the old look of it with the art. I love that old Fantasy Flight Games aesthetic, and all of the Arkham Horror old art is just fantastic. So that's Arkham Horror 2nd Edition. I recommend it 100%. Next, we have Bloodborne, the board game. Now, this is not much of an RPG or adventuring game, but it is a fantastic dungeon crawler, and we are talking about dungeon crawlers in this list, okay? So, one of the coolest things about this game is the fact that it plays great with just one character. It is very puzzly, and I think it does justice to the video game, which I've played. I've not beaten it, but I enjoy it. And it is a campaign based game where you're going to pick your Bloodborne character and you're going to go through a series of scenarios. So they're very short campaigns, okay, which I appreciate. It's only a few missions. I think, if I remember correctly, it's 3 missions, okay? So you go on 3 missions consecutively, and there's these decks of encounters that you're gonna draw from that will vary just to keep the missions from not being the same every time. You're gonna have variable objectives, okay, from drawing from this event deck, basically. So you can replay the campaigns, and it's not gonna be samey. You're gonna also find different monsters to fight. There's also different Bloodborne, like the hunter characters that you're gonna pick. And now, it is a campaign-based game, but if you just want a one-off dungeon crawl, there is a expansion called the Chalice Dungeon Expansion. I personally wasn't a fan of it. I think this game works best as a quick 3-mission campaign game, but your mileage might vary with that. I personally wasn't a fan, but just the base game, I honestly don't think you need anything else. I think the base game has tons of content, but yeah, this is just a amazing puzzly dungeon crawler that has no dice, okay? For people that care about that, there's no dice in this game. All combat is resolved through decks, all right? And it has that short campaign element to it that's pretty replayable and with very satisfying, tile placement and dungeon exploration. It's just very, very good, and it does justice to the IP. So Bloodborne, one of my favorite video game-based titles, great solo dungeon crawler. Now, moving on, we have D100 Dungeon. This is a pure pen and paper RPG, and all you're gonna need, at least to start with, is this free print and play version, and there might be an updated one. I printed this a couple of years ago, and yeah, you can just download the free print and play version, and you just need a few dice and you're good to go. And if you want that classic, just pen and paper experience, this is designed to be like that. And it is meant to be played with just one character, okay? You don't control a party of characters here, and you resolve everything through charts, okay? So you roll and compare with charts. There is a combat element, so this is a dungeon crawler RPG, okay? So it checks those boxes, all right? And you're gonna be drawing your map, okay? So you're gonna need some additional sheets of paper for you to draw your map. And there's this phase in between dungeon crawls where you basically visit the city and whatnot, and you heal and you buy and sell things. And you eventually can retire your character and whatnot if it doesn't get killed first. But yeah, you have these tables that you check things against to see what happens, what loot you find, what monsters you encounter. So yeah, very interesting. And if you've never played a D&D game, this probably emulates that very well. So it'll give you a pretty good idea. And there's a lot of supplements that you can buy to expand on the game. There's a proper core box, or not core box, core book that you can purchase from the designer. I'll leave some links, okay, if you want to purchase like the full-fledged core book for this. And if you want to board gamify this a bit, I know that I think in the Game Crafter you can buy like map cards for this, okay? And I think spell cards, so you don't have to have everything on paper. So there's a pretty neat system. I haven't played it in a while just because I personally prefer like more board gamified things rather than writing things down, although this was very neat to experience, okay? So I know that there's people that eat this system up, and I do enjoy it a lot, don't get me wrong, but I just prefer like the map tiles already being available, and everything being in card form rather than me having to write it down. So yeah, I've just gotten spoiled by playing like completely board gamified RPGs. But this is a neat system. If you want to keep things minimal, it's fantastic. That's D100 Dungeon. Next, we have Dark Souls, the card game. And now, this is not much of an adventuring game or RPG. There are classes in this game that you pick for your character, so that's the most RPG thing or element that you're going to get out of it. But I think this is a great dungeon crawler in card form. Okay, so you're going to pick 2 characters typically is the best way to play solo, although you could play with 1 character. I don't recommend it, but it's not that bad controlling 2 characters. So you're going to pick 2 classes, and each class is represented by a deck. Okay, so you start with a small deck, and your health is represented by your deck, and your deck is going to have these stamina cards and also items. Okay, like equipment or just like random items with certain effects, and you're going to use those items to attack. You're going to go to locations in a map and attack monsters, and you start with basic monsters that you fight against, and they have certain patterns. So you have this grid-based combat that's very interesting, and you will gain this souls currency, okay? And then when you come back to the camp, you use that currency to improve your deck, like by buying loot or stamina cards, okay? So very, very cool dungeon crawling system, all card based, no dice resolution. Okay. And it has this very cool deck construction element. Okay. Because based on the loot that you obtain, you have to choose the right stamina cards to activate the loot that you've added to your character deck. So it has a very neat deck construction element. I quite enjoyed this game. And I've heard of the board game, the full-fledged board game for Dark Souls, but I've heard mixed things about it, so I personally haven't tried it. But I can for sure recommend this, and you can get the base game for a relatively decent price. There's expansions for it, which I do recommend, all right? But if you want a neat, dark dungeon crawler where you pick a class and you go and defeat monsters and bosses too, by the way, the bosses are very interesting. There's patterns, like they have patterns that you kind of have to learn in order to defeat them, kind of like in the video game, right? So it kind of translates that, which is very impressive. But this game just has so many interesting elements. I wish controlling 1 character worked a bit better. But yeah, the best way to play is with 2 characters. But yeah, Dark Souls, the card game, I've talked about this before, 100% recommended. Next, we have Dragon's Down. And this game just came out this year, and it has had an impact, okay? I made a full review for this, which I'll link, and I also made some playthroughs if you want to check out how it plays. But basically, this is a modern game that is heavily inspired by the classic game Magic Realm, okay? So it is a bona fide adventuring game where you're going to have an overland map that is randomly generated each game, okay? So you're going to pick a character either at random or by choice, a combination of race and class, all right? And you're going to find loot, and you're going to explore the land. And just the way, as I explained in my review, the way that this generates maps, you'll never see the same map again, okay? Just the way that the map tiles are designed in this game and the way that exploration works, every map that you generate will feel like a different world almost, and it's just so good at creating those emerging narratives, right? Just fantastic in that regard. Now, if you like the pen and paper elements of RPGs, this does offer it, although I decided not to use it, but I'm in a minority of that. There are journal pages here that you can use. So if you like the journaling and pen and paper element of that, not for tracking your character stats per se, but you want to journal and keep track of certain things, it does include the journal pages for that. This game does use dice for resolving combat and resolving tests. So just like many RPGs, it does that. This is not a dungeon crawler, okay? So it's not gonna be It's not going to be a part of that category. Okay, so it's an overland exploration game, and it is also perfectly suitable to just play with one character. Another one of the biggest advantages that this has over many of these games, okay, is that you don't have to control a party of characters. It plays perfectly fine with just one character. And it is not campaign based. You simply pick a scenario and you generate a map and you're good to go. Okay. Now, because of its classic fantasy setting, you're gonna find the the known classes from D&D, like the druid, the ranger, the cleric and whatnot. And you're also going to find classic enemies like orcs, dragons, kobolds, that kind of thing. And I just ate that up. I just love that. Okay, so this game offers that classic D&D fare. And for my money, this year when I voted this as my number one adventuring game. Okay, now this is a bit contested with the prior contender for that spot, and that's HEXplore, which I'll discuss later. Okay, but because this is shiny and new, and I wanted to boost it a bit in my, in the People's Choice Top 200, I did vote this as my number one adventuring game. But I do need to play both games back and forth. All right, but yeah, as of this year, I consider this the best adventuring game you can buy. Now, keep in mind that there's a short supply from the publisher, which probably went out of stock by now, but there is an upcoming Kickstarter campaign in January where they're going to reprint this and also add a new expansion. But yeah, this is not immediately available to buy unless you buy it third party. But yeah, if you want to find out more in detail how I feel about the game, I'll link the review. Check that out. Next, we have one of my most favorite RPGs in a box, and that's Degenerates. This game checks a few boxes. First, it is an overland adventuring game, but it also pulls off the RPG elements really well. You're going to pick a class, and they are unconventional classes. They're not going to be your classic like knight or priest. There's very unique classes here, and it has a very unique setting. It's set in this degenerate world, and is very definitely a very colorful setting and very degenerate as the name describes. So it might be a bit of an acquired taste, but believe it or not, I originally avoided this game because of the look of it, but it actually grew on me. I actually fell in love with it. There's no game in my collection that has this color palette, and I just adore it. I really like it. Now, for people that like loot, I think one of the weakest things about this game is like the loot. The loot doesn't feel as satisfying as in other games, and they don't give you like very significant boosts. At least most of the loot. Some loot will give you stat boosts, which are very powerful. But like the character, like building your character through loot and items. Yeah, it is here, but it's not its biggest strength. But the biggest strength comes from the emerging narrative and exploring the land. And one other really cool thing that this game does is you play these missions, right? So there's this mission book where you're going to start with a mission, and then based on the outcome of the mission, there's branching paths. And you can complete campaigns within a couple missions, right? They're not meant to be super long campaigns. And you can, over a weekend, play a whole a series of missions, and it'll feel like you played like a cool, miniature D&D campaign. So it's fantastic in that regard. You don't have to make this huge commitment. You can just bring it out, play it, and then just put it back in the shelf. Okay, after a weekend. And the rulebook is very well made. It is a bit involved. Okay, do keep that in mind. And I think that it plays best with at least two characters. Although you could control one character, I think the best experience so that you have more synergies and a bit of a better chance with different stats, so that the characters can have different focuses, is if you control at least two characters. Okay, but you could play with one character if you wanted. This is just one of the best RPGs in a box you could buy today. If the setting or the art are not a turnoff for you, I 100% recommend this game. And again, I originally avoided it because of the art, but I just think it's just so fantastic and it grew on me. So if it happened to me, it could happen to you too. So make sure that you do your homework on this and read about it. Just one of the best products in its category. That's Dungeon Degenerates. Moving on, we have Dungeons & Dragons Wrath of Ashardalon as part of the D&D adventure system. I've talked at length about this game and what the system has to offer, and it definitely checks a few boxes. First, it is mostly a party-oriented game, so for the best experience and in order to play most scenarios, you are going to have to control a party of characters, preferably at least 3, although you could go with 2, although I would not recommend it. And there are some scenarios where you can just play with 1 character if you really are not into controlling multiple characters. But this game allows you to just play one-off games, so there's scenarios that are offered and you can just pick any scenario you want, but you can also play the scenarios in succession, and there's even some scenarios where you play a few consecutive missions, so it's like a mini campaign situation. Okay, so if you wanna, so this game is super flexible in that regard, and there's many classes that you can choose from for various combinations. Okay, so there's that team building element before the game starts, where you outfit your characters with different abilities. Okay, there's looting, and it is a dungeon crawler, so the RPG elements are not as strong here. Okay, but it is a dungeon crawler. You're gonna be gaining loot and exploring and finding traps and enemies. So it captures that D&D essence, and it only uses 1 die for resolution. All right, and the game comes with so much. Okay, in this box, just look at all that stuff it comes with. There's so many miniatures. I really just think, as I mentioned before, I think that you really get your money's worth with this product. Okay, it's fantastic. And there's others in the series. You can buy whichever one appeals to you. I think this is the one that overall is the most recommended as the best overall package, Wrath of Ashardalon, but there's Castle Ravenloft, Legend of Drizzt, Temple of Elemental Evil. There's many in the series. I really think that you can't go wrong. But yeah, I just love the classic D&D enemies and classes from this set. Okay, but just fantastic system if you want to scratch the RPG itch, the dungeon crawling itch. It just does that so well. It's not gonna do the overland adventure thing or the just controlling 1 character thing very particularly well, but you'll definitely have some fun dungeon crawling, gaining loot, and just having all of your characters work together. So that's Dungeons & Dragons, Wrath of Ashardalon, or just the D&D adventure system. Highly recommended. Next, we have Fantasy Flight Games Fallout. And this is an overland adventure game, and you don't need to control a party of characters for this. You're able to just pick 1 character, of which there's many, especially if you buy expansions, okay? And each character will have different starting bonuses and abilities, so it'll keep things varied. And this is a scenario-based game, but because of the randomly generated maps at the beginning of each scenario, no 2 scenarios should play the same. And that was definitely my experience. I repeated scenarios multiple times, and things panned out completely different. And it does a great job of creating emerging narratives. And one very cool thing that this game system does is this quest chains. Okay, so this game adds a bit more detail and flavor to its event and quest system because of these numbered quest decks. Okay, where when you complete a quest, it'll instruct you to take out this numbered card from the quest deck, and then go to that one, which will instruct you to go to another location. So this quest will basically instruct you to go or motivate you to go to different parts of the map and explore the map. So this quest system in this game is just fantastic. There is dice resolution for combat, okay, and just tests in general. So do keep that in mind, as is with most of these RPG games. And now do keep in mind that for the best experience, you are going to need to buy the expansions for this, okay? There is the New California expansion and the Atomic Bonds expansion. And it is a bit of a bear to learn because when you add the expansions, so let's say that you read the core set rulebook, well, once you then read the expansion rulebook, you're going to have to then unlearn certain things from the core game when it comes to the solo experience, okay? So it is a bit of a weird learning experience. There isn't a all-in-one integrated rulebook, unfortunately, but I do suggest that if you want to get this, that you get the expansions, and yeah, be prepared to be flipping between all the rule books back and forth in order to learn it. This is a bit of a complicated game to learn once you add the expansions. And some people do enjoy just the core set solo play. Do keep that in mind. This is meant to be a competitive game, a multiplayer game. So the solo option of the core set, most people don't find it satisfying. I never even bothered to try it. I just integrated all the expansions from the get-go. It was just a bit of a pain to learn. But yeah, fantastic game, fantastic emerging narratives, very suitable to just play with one character, so no need to control multiple characters if you don't want to, and just great quest system. And no other games in my collection really do that. So yeah, that's Fantasy Flight Games Fallout. Moving on, we have Folklore, the Affliction. And boy, does this game check a lot of boxes, okay? So check this out. So this game has an overland adventuring element, but it also has a dungeon crawling element. And it also has a fantastic emerging narrative prowess, all right? This game pulls that off because the game moves between different scopes. So in certain parts of the game, you're going to be moving your characters in a map, but then you'll be instructed to pull out these dungeon tiles, and then you're going to move your miniatures and move them around and actually do the dungeon crawling part. But then you're also going to have skirmishes without the dungeon tiles, and then there's also events where you do tests, and it just does so many things right if you want a board gamified D&D experience. Now, there are a couple of areas where it lacks. One, you can't really play this with not two, with anything less than 3 characters, all right? So if you don't like the upkeep of controlling multiple characters, this game is going to present that obstacle to you, okay? I wish it worked a bit better with less than, at least ideally with 2, but not even with that. You really have to control 3 characters for this to work properly. It even offers pen and paper elements, okay? So if you want to write down your character stats, you can. You can also do it through an app. You can board gamify things even more with custom tokens if you want. But yeah, this is actually more, at least it suggests initially that when you set up your party, it's all through pen and paper. All right. So if you want that element of D&D, you can do it, or you can do a bit of extra work with tokens, and you can board gamify the whole thing. Now, this game doesn't offer one-off missions, okay? This is meant to be a campaign game, so you're gonna start, you're gonna open a storybook, and you're gonna start with the first mission, and then you're gonna work your way through the story in different missions. So it is a campaign game. Now, the campaigns are not super long, which I appreciate, okay? So the campaigns are only a few missions long, typically, kind of like Dungeon Degenerates. But yeah, like in any given day, I could, instead of explore it, I could feel like this is my number one D&D like, okay? But because of the Gothic setting, which I love, don't get me wrong, but it's missing those classic D&D tropes like the dwarves and the dragons. Like, that's the only thing this system is missing. And like I said, I just eat that up. I just love that classic D&D fare. That's the only thing that this lacks. If it was coded in that D&D paint, gosh, yeah, it would definitely be my number one like D&D like. If I wanted that D&D experience at home, this has it. But I do appreciate the dark Gothic setting. It's fantastic. You're gonna be fighting against vampires and ghouls. So it has that dark setting, which I love. It's kind of Diablo-esque. But yeah, folks, that's Folklore, the Affliction, and just the core set will keep you busy for a while. There's tons of expansions. If you want more campaigns, more characters, this is just such an amazing, amazing system. So if you haven't tried it, do yourself a favor. It's just so good. And the way that it moves between different scopes, from going from the overland map to zooming into the dungeon with your miniatures and finding events along the road. It's just so cool how it does that. Just love this game so much. So yeah, that's Folklore, the Affliction. 100% recommended. All right, and going back to just pure dungeon crawlers, we have Gears of War, the board game. So yeah, this is not an RPG or adventuring game in any capacity, but yeah, this is yet another dungeon crawler. And now to say that this game is out of print would be an understatement. All right, it is very much out of print. You're gonna have to pay a pretty penny in the secondary market, okay? But it is a great dungeon crawler. Now, it is very brutal, and some people do enjoy the brutality of the game, but it is pretty good at creating, although it's not an adventuring game, it does a pretty good job of creating emergent narratives, okay? With like the situations that your characters will face. And now, a thing against this game is that it just doesn't work very well with one character. I think the best way to play this is with at least 2 characters. And I got a bit frustrated with the difficulty of it, so I put it away. I might revisit this game one day, but another issue with the game is the longevity of it. Once you beat the 6 scenarios, 6 or so scenarios that are in it, there's not much of a reason to play it again, but the game is a classic because of its use. The card play here is very interesting. Your deck kind of works, or your hand works as your health, so that's very cool. So you have to be very careful with how you manage your hand. And although it is scenario based, it will be pretty varied, okay, based on what enemies you'll draw, and also through the different combinations of characters. The characters do feel pretty unique, and there will be some characters that are better suited for certain scenarios for sure, so that's something that you're going to have to puzzle with. But I made a full video on this. If you want to check it out, I'll link it. But great dungeon crawler, and with a focus on ranged combat too, by the way. But yeah, a very, very interesting design, a beloved classic, but yeah, out of print. So if you really want this, be ready to pay a pretty penny for it. So, and also to get your ass kicked because of the game's difficulty. So yeah, that's Gears of War, the board game. Next, we have Gloom of Kilforth, and just the Kilforth series of games in general. There's currently a trilogy, and I own all of them, okay? And I wouldn't have it any other way. I adore these games. And these are purely card-driven RPGs, and they play fantastic with just one character, which is a very precious attribute that I seek in a lot of these games. Although in some games, I do enjoy the interactions and synergies between classes in a party of characters. You'll find that there's very few games that allow you to just control one character with few compromises, which I've named a few already in this list, but yeah, this game is just so fantastic at that. And this first game in the series will have those classic D&D characters like the orc, the half-orc, the human, and the classes like the priest, the wizard, the knight, like the warrior. So it just offers that if you want to have that D&D fare, which, like I said, I eat that up. And it also has the classic enemies like kobolds and dragons and whatnot. And now the way that this works is instead of having a preset board with a map, you actually generate a map each game, and each location in the map is represented by cards. So it is going to be extremely varied, all right? And you're going to resolve things through dice, okay? And successes are only 5s and 6s, which makes it a bit brutal. But once you get the ropes of it, you're going to succeed. But yeah, the game is a bit tough to learn, to keep that in mind, all right? It's very unique from other games, okay, like the way that it works. So you're not going to be able to piggyback off of what you've learned of other games with this. Like, this is a very unique system, but I love it. And now, as far as the other entries, you have Shadows and then Call. I enjoy them. You can take your pick between this and Shadow. Like, Shadows of Kilforth has more of an Asian theme, okay, and it's darker. So if you prefer the theme, you can't go wrong with either that or this. Now, Call of Kilforth is cool, but does add a lot of new mechanics, which I would definitely not recommend as your first one in the series. I would basically just pick that if you already own this and you just want more of everything. And I don't think that these boxes combine very well. I would personally just keep the boxes individually, like as their own entry. Some people combine them, but yeah, I personally would just keep each box individually because that could mess the distribution of certain cards and your ability to win the games. Okay, but yeah, this system just does such an amazing job at creating emerging narratives and just letting you earn loot and allies and combining classes and races and defeating like big bad guys at the end in epic conflict. And you're gonna be rolling lots of dice if you enjoy that to resolve tests and combat. And it is brutal, okay? It is brutal, but once you kind of get the hang of it, your win rate will improve. But yeah, and again, it just controls great with one character. No need to control multiple characters and no compromises. So, and I haven't even talked about the art. Fantastic art, okay? Just amazing gothic dark fantasy art to boot, all right? It's just so good. So yeah, Gloom of Kilforth, one of my favorite fantasy adventuring RPGs in a box. Next, we have the Gloomhaven series of games, and right now I'm just showing you Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion. But these are more of like puzzly dungeon crawler games, okay? There is a campaign element to it, and there is a bit of a pen and paper element with your character and how they progress through the campaign and how they level up in a way. But yeah, as far as like RPG elements go, this is not what I think of when I think of Gloomhaven. What I think of this is more of a very, very puzzly and brain-burning dungeon crawler. Okay. And with the Jaws of the Lion box, at least, you have a pretty respectful and decent length campaign that won't take you forever. But if you want like the bigger, more sprawling and epic campaign, you can buy the bigger box, okay? But yeah, I just want to make sure that I mention this because this offers a nice like fantasy medieval, dark fantasy medieval experience controlling 2 or more characters. And yeah, that's correct. You can't really play this with just one character. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. So you have to control 2 or more. I think preferably 3. Some people suggest if you want like more synergies and the better experience. A lot of people suggest actually controlling 3 characters. But I went through the campaign with just 2 characters and I was fine. And one other interesting thing that this game does is that there's no dice resolution. One of the few games in this list that doesn't use dice at all. Okay, and some people hate dice. So if that's your thing, you're gonna eat this up. All right. So so this game is it's already very popular. So if you don't know about it, I'll be shocked. But in case you don't, I needed to make sure I brought this up because yeah, it does offer an RPG, a pseudo RPG experience where you progress through a campaign, but it is more of a brain-burning puzzle in my opinion. But yeah, that's Gloomhaven, Jaws of the Lion. And by the way, one of the best solo board gaming experiences that I've had in general, not just in this category of not just in this category of games. It's just, I think this Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion is just one of the best packages you can get in general, right? So yeah, make sure you check it out if you haven't. Next, we have HEXplore. And now HEXplore is a series of games, and the entry that I have in my library is The Forest of Adrimon. This is the second entry in the series. And as I've mentioned in other videos, this is my holy grail of D&D-esque games, okay? Now, as far as adventuring games go, this, as I mentioned earlier, this is now being contested by Dragon's Down. Now, the couple advantages that Dragon's Down has is that it allows you to just control one character, which is fantastic. In this game, you have to control a party of characters, okay? Now, you could play with just one character. I don't think that works out that well, personally. So I think that for the best experience, you want to control at least 2. And also, so Dragon's Down, I think, sets up a bit quicker, and it's a bit less of a commitment. It has less footprint without really compromising anything. But I like the aesthetic of this a lot more, and the setting and the classes. I think this is a bit more defined and unique. Dragon's Down is a bit more generic in comparison. So I don't know. I haven't arrived at a conclusion yet. I have to play these two back and forth and see. But one really cool thing about this is that there's no campaign commitment. It offers those one-off. Opportunities of just you set up, you pick a few classes, and you just embark on your quest. And man, this is just so cool, and it'll spark your imagination. At least based on the cards that are included in the base set, there's no illustrations, which I appreciate because it really will spark your imagination with the descriptions and all of that. And there's so many classes and races to choose from, and there's a lot of expansion content for this. And all the boxes are interchangeable. Like you can combine classes from different boxes. And I just love the setting here. And man, when I played this, I was completely hooked. Like for a few weeks when I first got this, like time just went by like you have no idea. Like I was just completely immersed in this world. It's just so good. Just talking about it is making me want to play it, to be honest. And check this out, right? So if you want a campaign element, which I know a lot of people love campaigns, right? I personally prefer games in general that just let me play once and put it back in the shelf, and I can always pull it back out and play it again. But check this out. They came out with these campaign books. Just look at how thick this thing is. Heavy, man. Look at that. So there's these campaign books, which I received this year. This came out this year. And I'm going to try next year to go through it, okay? That's my goal. I think next year is going to be the year of the campaign games for me, because I do have a lot of campaign boxes that I want to go through, okay? But there's a full-fledged campaign, and the campaign book that came out for the first entry in the series, I think it was called Kilk's Madness. I've heard nothing but good things about it, so I'm just salivating for when I finally get to play this in campaign form. It just sounds so amazing. So now for my money, if you want that D&D experience controlling a party of characters, this still is the holy grail. And again, just because mostly like the setting here is just more classic D&D with like the forest and the classes and the pixies and all of that. If it wasn't for that, I think Folklore would contest it a bit more, but because of Folklore's super dark setting and lack of like high fantasy things, it doesn't rank as high for me. But this system is just so fantastic, man, and it's just making me want to play it. It's just making me want to play it just talking about it. It's just so good, man. But yeah, that's the Explore It games, and I think you can't go wrong with the first two entries. There's many others after, like Domain of Misra Noctis and whatnot. Sands of Shurax. Do keep in mind that those are significantly more complex because they introduce a whole bunch of mechanics, okay? So just giving you a heads up with that. I would recommend you get either the first box or this one, the Forest of Adrimon, okay? If you want to kind of, you have that entry level title, okay, for familiarizing yourself with the system. And it is a bit tough to learn. Do keep that in mind. The rulebook is a bit long, but I didn't really have many issues, playing it or having to check for answers very often. It's just very well explained. But yeah, just such a fantastic system. Can't really say enough good things about Explore It. So yeah, check it out if you haven't. That's Explore It system. Moving on, we have Iron Helm, and this is a dungeon crawler, okay? An adventure game it ain't, but it is a card-driven dungeon crawler where you resolve things through dice, and it works with it's meant to be played from the ground up with just one character. So it's not a multiplayer game with a solo mode or whatever. No, it's just from the ground up solo game. Okay, now this is not a conventional game that you're gonna find at board game stores. This is from the Game Crafter, so you have to print this on demand. Basically, you can also just print the print and play files if you want to go through the time to do that yourself. But it is a really cool system that really gives you that it scratches that itch of going on a dungeon crawling ramp, and it is pretty brutal. Keep that in mind, at least initially before you add expansions. It can be a bit brutal with just the core box, okay? But it is one of my favorite games. Still in my top 20. Spoiler alert for when I release that list later this year. But yeah, this is still in my top 20. It's just such a fantastic title, okay? And yeah, it's just solo from the ground up game with no compromises. Fantastic art by Jason Glover as well. And it just gets better with expansions, okay? There's so many expansions for this. Like once you try this, you're just gonna eat it up, all right? And there's also Tin Helm if you want an even more miniaturized version of this, okay? So it's basically mini Iron Helm in a tin, all right? So if you want just a super quick adventure in a tin, there's also Tin Helm, all right? But yeah, Iron Helm, just one of the best solo board games that you can buy out there. Just controlling one character, you're gonna go in there, gain loot, defeat monsters, and beat the boss at the end. And it does, so it allows for just one-off games, but if you want to play a campaign, you can. So if you buy expansions, you're gonna then move to more difficult dungeons, okay? So you carry over your loot, and then you start a new game in a more difficult dungeon that scales with you, okay? But do keep in mind that your character can become pretty OP, all right? But yeah, there's expansions that will have different level, like level 2, level 3, level 4 dungeons. Okay, so progressively more difficult dungeons with more awesome loot that you can find. But yeah, just also awesome at creating emerging stories. So, and this is one of the few games that I've awarded my dopamine seal of approval. Okay, I just adore this game, just so good. It just hits different, you know what I'm saying? Okay, so yeah, that's Iron Helm, just such a fantastic game. All right, next we have One Deck Dungeon, and I mean, it's in the name, so I think I'll be crazy enough to include this in the list. So it is a dungeon crawler with some RPG elements for sure. So you're gonna pick a character, and this plays great just with one character, okay? You could play with two characters, but I think that there's just no need. So with just one character, you pick one of the classes here. You have classic D&D classes like the Wizard, the Rogue, the Range, like the Archer, the Warrior. Just, I love that. All-female cast. And you're going to explore dungeons. You're going to delve and open doors, and you're going to find other traps or monsters, and you're going to fight them by rolling colorful dice and allocating them, okay? And you can play just one-off sessions if you want, but there's also a pretty cool light campaign element to this, where you have your character sheet, and you can add improvements to your character, which will let you delve into more difficult dungeons, okay? Because if you try to beat one of the more difficult dungeons with a fresh character, you're gonna get destroyed. So there's a bit of this progression where you improve your character, which will allow you to beat more difficult dungeons, okay? So I love that mini campaign element that this has if you want that pen and paper element with your character sheet. So this is just such a fantastic package, okay? It is a bit on the lighter side, okay? It's not the crunchiest game, but just one of my favorite solo board games in general, and for the small box, this is just fantastic. So yeah, this is more of a, rather than an adventuring game, it's a dungeon crawler with some very light RPG elements. But yeah, you gain loot, you gain abilities, you increase your stats. So yeah, it has those very, very, albeit light, but yeah, it has those RPG elements nonetheless. But yeah, just a One Deck Dungeon, just a classic solo board game. Next, we have Pathfinder Adventure Card Game. And I once heard someone describe this as a dream solo board game. And you know what? I kind of agree. Like, if you wanted to just delve into this and just keep this on your table for weeks, you really could. So this is a purely card-driven RPG system, okay? And there's a very light pen and paper element, if you want to call it that even, where your character cards, you make upgrades on them by just marking them, right? So it's a bit hard to see here, but yeah, your character cards have those little check boxes where when you level them up very gradually, you just check a little box on your character card. So you could just use a sleeve and some dry erase, and you'll be good, okay? But yeah, everything here is represented to cards, and it's so interesting what this game does to keep card play interesting. You're gonna be putting cards at the bottom of your deck, on top of your deck, in play, in your hand, like in your discard pile, in front of your characters. So there's all of these ways that the game represents doing actions by depending on where you put your card, right? And how you manipulate the cards. And you're gonna be rolling tons of dice. If you love doing tests for combat or for certain attributes, yeah, like it has all of those elements that define RPGs, but it's all done through cards, okay? And you are going to be controlling a party of characters, so it's not one of those games that controls well with one character, although you technically could. I don't think that would work out super well because certain tests in the missions here will call for a character being strong with certain attributes. And if you don't have a character that has certain attributes, you're going to have a hard time. So when you have your party of characters, you're going to be able to handle obstacles and enemies much better, right? But just with the core box, it includes a very simple campaign, like a relatively short campaign. But man, I was just glued to my table playing this when I played it for the first time this year, and I barely even scratched the surface with the core set campaign. There's also a campaign expansion with the Crimson Throne, and also there's online campaigns that you can download digitally, all right, if you want to play more with just those two, the expansion and the core box, okay? But yeah, if you love chucking dice, man, do I got the game for you, okay? You're gonna be chucking lots and lots of dice and resolving tests like that, and the dice are gonna screw you sometimes, even when you add a bunch of powers to roll more dice than you need to. But but sometimes also when you decide not to use a lot of powers and just roll a couple dice and you still pass the test, it just feels great, right? So I just love what this game does with just cards and a few standees, man. Like the way that you set up locations and move your characters around, it's just so fantastic. Love this. And this is the core set, the latest core set. There's the older core sets that some people enjoy, so you kind of take your pick. I think that you can't go wrong with either. Just read about them and see what you prefer. There's some key differences, right, which I'm not going to get into here. But yeah, read about the older core sets and then read about this newer core set. But I adore this, and the card play is just so good. I just love this, and it's just such, and it also has that classic, like I said, as I mentioned, that I enjoy, like that classic D&D look and classes and enemies. It just nails that fantasy setting so well. I just adore this Pathfinder setting so much. It's just fantastic. So great card-driven RPG, and just great D&D experience in card board game form. Highly recommend it. Moving on, we have Runebound, and this is second edition, and I do also own third edition. Very shamefully, I have not gotten around to play it yet. I should have a long time ago, but I've only played second edition, and this is a very beloved overland adventuring RPG where it controls great, it plays great with just one character, and it has a pretty simple rule set. It will feel a bit plain compared to a lot of games that I've already mentioned here, but like the simplicity of this game, to me, it's part of its charm. And as I mentioned with Arkham Horror, I just love this like old Fantasy Flight Games aesthetic, man. I just adore it. It just looks so, it's just so charming. Okay, I love it, and it has those classic D&D tropes as well, which, as I've said, I just keep saying, I just love, like, the dragons and the skeletons. I just love that, okay? A bit, it will definitely show its age a bit compared to some of the titles that I've mentioned. But yeah, you resolve dice, everything here through dice. One very peculiar thing that this game does is that movement. When you move around the map, you actually roll dice for it, okay? So based on the result of the dice, it'll tell you, okay, you can move into a mountain, you can move into like a plains area, you can move into a river. So you're gonna be kind of at the mercy of the movement dice. Okay, so that's a very unique thing that this game does compared to other games. Typically, when it comes to movement around the map, it's like, okay, you can move X amount of spaces. It's fixed, right? But here, you're gonna be at the mercy of those dice, right, for where you can move, which sometimes will make you go into directions that you were not expecting or planning to go. Okay, so very interesting how it does that. You resolve tests and combat here through dice, but in third edition you resolve them casting these tokens. Basically, it's like you flip them like coins. I need to try that yet. Like there's very fierce argument of people that like second edition versus third edition. Okay, let me know in the comment section which one you prefer. But I very much look forward to trying third edition at some point. And one way that I've heard people describe this or third edition, it kind of feels like World of Warcraft almost. Just, you control your one character and you go around completing quests. It kind of feels like that. I do agree. So if you want like a board game ish version of World of Warcraft, and there's an actual World of Warcraft board game, by the way, but if you want like a compromise without the code of Warcraft, this kind of offers that. Okay, but yeah, this is very much out of print, by the way, but you can find just the core box at a decent price out there. Now the expansions go for outrageous prices, just like with Arkham Horror, all right? But yeah, Runebound, this is a beloved classic, and yeah, read about it if you want a simple rule set for an adventuring, an overland adventuring RPG. Next, we have Shadows of Brimstone, and I've brought this game up in many of my lists, and this is just my number one dungeon crawler, okay? But this game also checks so many boxes. Do you want the game to be fully board gamified? You can do that. Do you want it to be a pen and paper RPG? You can do that. Do you want to play with 1 or 2 characters? You can. Do you want to play with 3 or 4 characters? You can. It's just so good. It checks so many boxes and it's so flexible, okay? Although, when it comes to character count, I think the bare minimum should be 2, but you could kind of conceivably just control 1 character in this game. But I think I recommend minimum 2. But yeah, this game is just such a fantastic dungeon crawler and RPG and adventuring game. And if you want that overland adventuring that some of the games that I've listed here do, there is a very famous fan-made expansion called HEXplore, where you're going to have your party of characters in between dungeon crawl missions moving around a map. Okay, so you can integrate that. I haven't done it because this game is already a bit rules intensive, so I don't want to add more to that. But yeah, there's that option too. But this game also is a lifestyle game, so if you want to build awesome miniatures, you can do that. And do keep that in mind, you're going to have to assemble miniatures for this. But if you don't want to paint them, you can skip that part. But yeah, you're going to have to assemble miniatures. But man, this is just so good. This game is amazing at generating dungeons and generating emerging narratives through events, and both in the dungeon and between dungeons, because there's this town phase, okay, where things will happen. You could get ambushed, or some catastrophe could happen, and it affects the town. And this is just with the Western set. There's a feudal Japan set, there's a Viking set, there's a conquistador set, and a Kickstarter campaign just ended where there's going to be an Egypt themed set. Just with the core set, you're going to have countless hours of fun. And this system feels like Legos with how much you can add to it. There's expansions that will give you more character classes. There's expansions that will add more enemies. There's expansions that will add more events, more loot. There's just so many ways in which you can customize it and expand it. This is just an amazing system. And if you want to scratch the RPG itch by yourself or even with friends, this is just so good. Do you want to scratch the dungeon crawler itch? You can. And do you just want to play one-offs, or do you want to play a campaign? You can. It's just so good. The Shadows of Brimstone just checks so many boxes, and it's my number one dungeon crawler. But it doesn't feel like D&D because of the Western setting more than anything. So that's why when it comes to like a party, like a D&D party, game, I kind of prefer either Folklore or explore it in that regard if I want more of like the D&D feel. But yeah, this is just an amazing system in its own right, and just one of the best dungeon crawlers you can get. Moving on, we have Star Wars Imperial Assault. Do you like Star Wars? Yes. Do you like dungeon crawlers? Yes. Well, there you go. That's what Imperial Assault is. It is a dungeon crawler that you can play solo if you use the official app, or there's a couple fan-made options with a fan-made app and also a fan-made card-driven solo system. Okay, but just with the core box and with the official app, you get a very cool campaign where you can control a party of characters and do the dungeon crawling part, and then the app will take care of the DMing part by dropping off enemies and showing you the objectives and all of that. But it's just amazing. Okay, now, yes, this is not like the fantasy setting like a lot of the games in this list, but I mean, it is just an amazing dungeon crawler, and I would be, doing you a disservice if I didn't bring this title up. But yeah, I mean, this is an amazing system that's been around for a while. There's like infinite expansions for them. There's even fan-made expansions. The app has various campaigns. So if you want to play another campaign beyond the core box, There's a whole bunch of options out there. I did make a purchasing guide for this. If you're interested, I'll link it, okay, for the solo player, right? Because when you first get into the system, it's a bit of a rabbit hole finding out what all the expansions do. So I'll leave a link in the description for my purchasing guide for this, okay, if you want to get into this. But you're gonna be gaining loot with your characters throughout the campaign and improving them and leveling them up. So there are those RPG elements of customizing your characters as well. And there's amazing Star Wars miniatures to paint. Gosh, this is just such an amazing package. Okay, so yeah, Star Wars Imperial Assault. Make sure this doesn't go under your radar if you haven't tried it already. And finally, we have Too Many Bones, a dice builder RPG. So this is a very peculiar game. Well, one, it's a very premium game. You're gonna have to pay over $100 for the core box of this, okay? But with its price, it also reflects its premium nature, okay? Because you're gonna get these weight chips, okay? You're gonna have this premium neoprene mats, all right? So yeah, it is a premium product, but man, it offers such a cool experience. You can control from 1 to 4 characters, and it works well at various character counts. I typically play between 1 and 3 characters, but I rarely play with 2. I think either 1 or 3 are the sweet spot. But it offers a mini campaign, like a mini session where you pick a few characters and you go through an adventure, and there's no campaign commitment. You go through encounters, you gain loot, you level up your characters, and then you face a boss at the end, and all within a short amount of time, like a couple hours. So it offers like a cool RPG experience. There's no pen and paper element to this or anything, but it's just it has strong RPG elements with your character building and the emerging. I wouldn't play this because of the emergent narrative. Is not as interesting as a lot of other titles that I mentioned here, but you will encounter peculiar events, okay? And the game has an interesting sense of humor. There's different classes that feel very unique, okay? Especially when you add expansions. The game does benefit a lot from expansions, by the way, so you're probably gonna fall in love with this, so do be prepared to hash out a lot of money for this system, because you are going to want to buy everything, and it's going to be hard to control yourself. So I have warned you. So do be, if you have low self-control, just be wary of getting into the system, because you're gonna want to buy everything, and you're gonna have to. I had to stop myself from buying everything because I just love it so much. I don't own everything, but yeah, this is just such a good system, man, and it just has awesome gameplay, and it's so unique because of like the premium nature of it with the neoprene mats and the premium dice and the chips. It's just, gosh, what an experience! And this is within my top 10 solo board games of all time, period. But if you want an RPG experience that's a bit more unique and just kind of stands out compared to other titles with its setting, its character art, the humor, the components, it's just such a unique package. But yeah, I mean, it is an RPG game. You're going to be building your party of characters, customizing your characters, encountering enemies, and having like dice-driven combat. So it checks some of those boxes, and it is so unique. But yeah, that's the Too Many Bones system. Highly recommended. All right, so I hope that you found a game that will scratch that RPG, adventuring, or dungeon crawling itch. And if you have any comments, questions, feedback, go ahead and put them in the comment section. And if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.